Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Trump is destroying the DOJ. And he's not just doing that. He's taking over the federal government because really that's what he was elected to do. It wasn't about the eggs. It was about getting rid of the corruption of a bunch of people that think they are entitled to run the country simply because they call themselves civil servants. And they've created a system where there's no accountability for them. A lot of people voted for Trump. He got the popular vote. They voted for him to correct all of this, to get the country back under control. And that's exactly what he's doing. The Department of Justice is a major focus for him. Trump is demolishing the corrupt DOJ with firings and investigations. From Politico, Trump's DOJ already feels like a wholesale politically inspired demolition. And you know Trump's in the real estate business. He likes to relate things to demolition, and I think they're starting to get the message. Yeah, this is a demolition. Also from Politico, acting attorney general fires prosecutors who worked for special counsel Jack Smith. Smith resigned earlier in January. You would think these prosecutors would have had the decency to just resign themselves after being involved in these ridiculous investigations of Trump, ridiculous prosecutions of Trump. And knowing that Jack Smith was actually removed from the case in Florida for not even being legally appointed. But there's always this attitude of this professional class, not all professionals, just this group of professionals, where they just congratulate themselves. And they say, hey, we're career civil servants. We can do whatever we want. And they get regulations passed, they get laws passed, but these don't apply to the President of the United States. If the President of the United States, the actual elected president of the United States in the executive branch, decides he does not want certain people representing the United States of America, whether it's a cabinet position or someone in the Department of Justice or even an inspector general. If they're in the executive branch, of course he can fire them. And if their regulations say otherwise, they can sue over that. And in a couple of years, maybe they'll get a settlement. Either way, Trump will have control over the government, and he'll get the government back to following the rule of law. No more of this politics in government. Of course, they call it political when Trump acts out against them. But it's not that. It's not what the people want. That's why he was elected. He reigns among the staff at the beleaguered law enforcement agency as a new reality sets in at the DOJ. Career lawyers and staff at the Department of Justice say the rush of changes in the first week of the Trump administration make them feel like they're under siege. And they are. President Donald Trump's acting attorney general fired more than a dozen prosecutors who worked on the criminal cases against Trump, reassigned senior personnel across major divisions, and dramatically shifted workplace rules, all in a matter of days. As long as he has the authority to do it, it doesn't matter how quickly it's done. In his first administration, Trump really didn't have a problem with these people having their little fiefdoms, and he had his important position in the White House, and he did what he needed to do, but these people constantly undermined him. They attacked him, and he's trying to run the country. You know, you're attacking someone who is trying to run the country. So when he gets the opportunity to fix the mistake that he wound up making, which was to treat these people like they were decent people and they could do their thing and he would do his thing, and if they did something, it would be on behalf of the country, not behalf of their own interests, that was the only mistake he could have made. I don't consider it a mistake. I would have done exactly the same thing. Who would have thought these people would actually get involved in these impeachments and then later in criminally prosecuting him and civilly prosecuting him just to keep him out of trying to run for president again? But they did this, and now they get to find out what happens in response. Even as the moves followed through on vows Trump made on the campaign trail to remake the department under his vision, the swift action still took staffers by surprise. Quote, it feels like a nonviolent war. It's just wild. Everybody's a sitting duck, and these people have no power or control over the situation, according to one DOJ career employee. Well, people are just in a state of shock and devastated. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. Nothing that happened during the first Trump administration came anywhere close to this. Politico talked to more than a dozen current and former DOJ officials to put together this story, most of whom were granted anonymity because of fears of potential retribution. Trump's blanket pardon of January 6 rioters, which wiped out years of work, demoralized some already anxious staff. So do the sharp shifts in DOJ's prosecution policies, including a broad halt to litigation by Justice's Civil Rights Division, the firings of more than a dozen attorneys who work for special counsel Jack Smith, the transfers of veteran national security prosecutors, and a call by a Trump appointee for January 6 prosecutors to turn over their files for special review have been more disruptive than any policy changes. Kind of scary when someone says, hey, you know what? We want to take a look at your work, prosecutors, and see what you were doing was appropriate, that you weren't abusing the law, that you weren't conspiring together to abuse the law, and putting together your prosecutions, because there are certain legal standards that they needed to follow. And if they didn't follow those standards because they were going after a result, not really following proper procedure, they're going to have themselves a big problem. But the truth of it is that is what they did, and they are going to have big problems. Trump officials' early decision to reassign top career leaders of the National Security Division and the Criminal Division to less desirable jobs has fueled much of the concern. Among the officials given 15 days to accept a reassignment, the department's most senior career official, Associate Deputy Attorney General Bradley Weisenheimer, actually it's Weinsheimer, and the head of the Public Integrity Section, Corey Amundson. Those officials and others were offered slots on a newly formed team aimed at combating sanctuary city policies. But at least some are expected to turn down those offers and leave the department. The firings, which don't appear to have included any offers of reassignment, up the tension further. Quote, it's got to be among the most demoralizing moments in the history of the Department of Justice, said one former DOJ career official. Quote, it's a flat-out purge of individuals who this administration must view either of suspect loyalty or have worked on matters they just did not like. We are in the early phases of what to me is looking like a wholesale politically inspired demolition of the Department of Justice in key places. It is a political demolition. The people who pursued prosecutions against the President of the United States are being fired over bringing political prosecutions. Against the United States, you're going to bring a political prosecution against a current or former president of the United States under a special counsel who was removed for being illegally appointed, and you think there's not going to be consequences? Yeah, there's consequences. Acting Attorney General James McHenry, who is running the department temporarily while Pam Bondi awaits Senate confirmation, ordered the firings of the prosecutors who worked on the special counsel's team. A Justice Department official said McHenry, quote, did not believe these officials could be trusted to faithfully implement the president's agenda because of their significant role in prosecuting the president. Several employees also said new personnel policies like the Trump administration's demand that employees come to the office 5 days a week has done much to fuel the same sense of turmoil among lawyers and others at DOJ as any of the shifts in enforcement priorities, because God forbid they should have to show up to work. Some flexible work arrangements put into place during the pandemic are nearly 5 years old, and rolling them back has complicated the lives of many employees, especially those with young children. Wait a minute, the fact that the policies are 5 years old and they were enacted to deal with the pandemic is not a reason to say it's not fair to come back into the office. It's a reason to say, hello, it's been 5 years, it's time to come back to the office. Government-wide directives the administration issued calling on agencies to identify all employees on probationary periods have led to some panic among DOJ personnel who've been at the agency for less than 2 years and lack most civil service protections. Meaning it will be all that much easier to get rid of those people. We don't need those people in the government and they're on a probationary period? Okay, well then they can probably just be fired quite easily. Quote, it's the probation announcement that has people completely terrified, said the career staffer. Quote, there are a lot of question marks around some of these programmatic shifts, but they're really not question marks with respect to some of the fundamental employment issues. Fear has also set in among prosecutors who handled cases against more than 1,500 people charged in connection with the riot at the Capitol on January 6, 2021. They already saw their work undermined and abandoned by the pardons Trump gave to nearly everyone convicted. However, the sheer number could be an obstacle to significant retribution. Hundreds of Justice Department attorneys from across the country, including many who rarely get involved in criminal matters, picked up January 6 cases in what DOJ says was the largest prosecutorial and investigative effort ever undertaken by the department. Quote, obviously they can't fire everybody, the former DOJ career official said. I think they'd be pretty surprised. They'd be more than happy to shrink the size of the Department of Justice and fire everyone involved in that and anything anywhere near like that. At the FBI, a directive from the Justice Department's acting number 2 official, Emile Beauvais, to redirect the nation's roughly 200 joint terrorism task forces towards immigration enforcement is rankling some agents who fear being called out the next time a terror plot in the making is missed. All of these people are always on the FBI's radar anyway. The issue is these people spent their time chasing after January 6ers, breaking into houses, doing raids. So now they're being taken away from that duty and putting on immigration enforcement. It won't be that much of an adjustment. They'll just have to do their jobs. Both the FBI and DOJ do not have infinite resources to do infinite things, said Chuck Rosenberg, a former FBI chief of staff. That is why, for the last quarter century, they've prioritized national security work. There are genuine and dangerous counterterrorism and national security threats out there, and we divert resources from them and sideline experienced career professionals at our peril. But they had plenty of time to knock down old ladies' doors and arrest them in the middle of the night. Well, they're going to be working on other things right now. Another former FBI official with extensive experience managing the task forces, which typically include federal, state, and local law enforcement, said the DOJ move opens the FBI to being second-guessed the next time a major act of terrorism takes place, such as the truck attack that killed 14 people on New Orleans' famous Bourbon Street on New Year's Day. Oh, really? Well, we've been second-guessing the FBI every time, particularly if you remember that attack. They had an unfortunate person with a nose ring telling the public that that was not a terrorist attack. So it looks like they don't have their allocated resources working properly as it is. When Trump gets his FBI organized, they won't be doing that kind of thing again. Well, you take your eye off the ball for the more concerning type of a threat, whether domestic terrorism, international terrorism, homegrown violent extremism, or foreign-inspired plots. Quote, that's a lot of hard work to be done solely focused on the threat of terrorism. To pull people and split their time, there is criticism already of the FBI for miscues related to the Boston bombers and whether they missed things going on in New Orleans, which they obviously did. Quote, you're taking valuable resources and dedicating resources from targeting the highest priority threats to the country to something that's not nearly the threat. Well, I thought we had a lot of terrorists that were coming in through the southern border. We kind of figured out that we did, so maybe the FBI could actually work down there and help out on that. Also roiling the waters at DOJ are a series of unusual public comments by the new acting U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Ed Martin. In a provocative social media post last week, he endorsed Trump's pardon of the 2 police officers convicted of a conspiracy to obstruct justice in connection with the death of a 2020 suspect that they were pursuing. Quote, hear me loud and clear. We will stand with the blue against the thugs and scum who terrorized D.C., Martin wrote on X. Quote, today I spoke with the MPD chief of police 3 times about protecting the blue. Under Biden, they chose politics over police. I choose police. Free these guys, and let's go get the bad guys. Many law enforcement officials opposed the prosecution, and the Metropolitan Police Department issued a statement welcoming the pardons. But some former prosecutors said Martin's comments appeared to endorse a gloves-off approach to policing. Quote, a lot of the people with little or no experience in law enforcement or criminal prosecution often think the solution is to empower violent or lawless police officers, said Brendan Ballou, who resigned from the Justice Department last week after handling January 6 cases. Oh, so he's one of those guys. Quote, my sense is that it's completely counterproductive and frankly betrays a certain lack of experience on the part of people saying that. Martin's remarks echoed controversial calls by Trump for more aggressive tactics by police. Months into his first term, Trump urged police to stop treating suspects so kindly. Well, please don't be too nice, he implored. And at a rally during his last campaign, Trump said, quote, one real rough, nasty, and violent day of police targeting criminals would immediately wipe out crime. Some former officials also said Martin's inflammatory rhetoric is likely to backfire on prosecutors, as judges look at the government's claims with more skepticism and give more leeway to defense lawyers making arguments that police were abusive or corrupt. Trump hasn't started on the Washington, D.C. judges yet, but I can assure you, that little group of Washington, D.C. judges that all came out of the DOJ, all know the prosecutors of the DOJ, it's a little club of people in there, all trying to accomplish the same things. He will deal with those people. I don't know how, but I'm sure he will. Because it's necessary. Quote, you know that very good defense attorneys are going to turn this against the office, one former federal prosecutor said. In another attention-grabbing move, Martin tangled publicly with a federal judge in Washington last week, taking to X to accuse him of overreaching and ordering that several January 6 defendants whose sentences Trump commuted stay away from the Capitol. The judge, Amit Mehta, backed down on Monday while evincing some irritation with Martin's approach. Because this judge, who had J6ers in his court and sentenced J6ers, was trying to still control them after they had no charges pending against them. He was saying, look, you're still going to have these limitations on where you can go. I'm going to follow up with you and check on you. And Trump's people said, no, you can't do that. They've been pardoned or commuted. You have no authority in this case anymore. And the judge knows that. They're just abusing their power. This is not something that is difficult to figure out. If judges have a question, they also have resources to go to. Other judges, friends, attorneys, they can't get away with this unless they do it and nobody responds. And they're not getting away with it anymore. Quote, some people apparently equate sounding tough with effective leadership, but effective leaders think and talk in serious and sophisticated and thoughtful ways, Rosenberg said. This ain't that. That doesn't sound very sophisticated. Despite the current turmoil, there seems to have been only a smattering of departures so far by career lawyers. Quote, every government employee in moments like this needs to decide where they can best do the right thing, said Ballou, who wrote a New York Times op-ed last week denouncing Trump's pardons. Quote, for some, that's by staying inside government or by leaving and leaving noisily. And I thought I could be most effective by leaving noisily. Well, good for you. You could be noisy. Just don't do it representing the United States anymore. That's all we ask. Also from Politico, acting attorney general fires prosecutors who work for special counsel Jack Smith. It's unclear what legal authority the Justice Department is relying on for the terminations. Typically, it's difficult and time-consuming to dismiss career federal prosecutors as they're entitled to significant layers of review. Legal experts said a court battle over the firings is all but certain. Quote, these are suspicious terminations. The grounds are a hodgepodge of disinformation and distortion of facts and law alike, according to Norm Eisen, a vocal Trump critic who served as the White House ethics counsel under President Barack Obama. Quote, the president and his appointee have the power to hire and fire federal employees, but it must be done within the bounds of the rule of law, Eisen added. The legal hurdles are particularly steep for career federal employees, many of whom appear to be included here. This will almost certainly trigger litigation and will likely be met with extreme judicial skepticism. Because the judges and these prosecuting attorneys are all in the same cute little club in Washington, D.C. That doesn't matter. There's nothing that the judges or these fired attorneys can do about their situation. They can sue about it, they can deal with it in court over the next few years, but they are out of the Justice Department, which was the whole point of getting rid of them, even as opposed to reassigning them, which could have easily been done, and they won't be plotting against the president or anyone that works for the president. And it's not just the DOJ where Trump has taken control of the government. Reddit has a subreddit on it called Fed News. Man, these people are hysterical, I can promise you that. But an employee at the Office of Personnel Management is explaining Trump is taking full control of the entire government, all the employees, and Elon Musk is helping him do it. Here's what he says as an insider. I'm a current employee at the Office of Personnel Management. I'm posting this because people need to know what's going on at OPM. That's the Office of Personnel Management. I've been an OPM employee for nearly a decade and a federal employee for almost 20 years. I've never witnessed anything remotely close to what's happening right now. In short, there's a hostile takeover of the federal civil service. Now, of course, these people should respect the fact that they work for a president that was elected by a popular vote by the people, but they consider it a hostile takeover for there to be changes. He continues, let me say this, in no uncertain terms, OPM has been compromised and taken over. The very backbone of American government, the HR of all HR in the U.S. government, has been taken over by outside politicals. In just 5 days, they managed to push aside dozens of non-political career civil servants who were there specifically to prevent the civil service from becoming the president's henchmen. The current acting director, Charles Ezell, is a low-level branch chief. He's the friendliest yes man you'll ever meet. He never says no. It's clear they pushed aside all the high-level non-political civil servants who refused to do Donald Trump's bidding until they found Chuck. Under Chuck's name, they've sent numerous requests to all the agencies to collect information on government employees that they see as a threat to their agenda. Instructions say to send these lists to Amanda Scales, But Amanda is not actually an OPM employee. She works for Elon Musk. She wasn't even properly cleared by OPM personnel security. Of course, all security clearances emanate from the power of the president, and Donald Trump is able to, by executive order or by memo or any method he chooses, extend security clearances up to literally any level to any individual he sees fit. And as we saw earlier, he can take away the clearances of people he doesn't feel deserve to have national security clearances. Our Chief Information Officer, Melvin Brown, was pushed aside just 1 week into his tenure because he refused to set up email lists to send out direct communications to all career civil servants. Such communications are normally left up to each agency. Who does this Melvin Brown think he is? You take an order from your superior. Just because you normally used to send communications individually by each agency doesn't mean that you're allowed to overrule your supervisor and tell him, no, we're not going to do it that way. Of course you're going to do it that way. And if you're not, you're getting replaced. And that's what happened to Melvin. Instead, an on-premises email server was set up. Someone literally walked into our building and plugged in an email server to our network to make it appear that emails were coming from OPM. It's been the one sending out those test messages you've all seen. We think they're building a massive email list of all federal employees to generate mass RIF notices down the road. An RIF notice is a reduction in force notice. It's a formal communication from an employer to employees that their jobs may be eliminated or their hours reduced. The non-political civil servants here at OPM are watching helplessly as our government is being systematically dismantled bit by bit. Even the IGs are being fired to prevent them from investigating the numerous whistleblower complaints we've already filed. Please share this and tell the world that OPM is not the bad guy. We're just as helpless to stop this as the rest of our fellow public servants. Hopefully someone out there can help us, but it's looking pretty grim. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.